Thanks for joining me again. This is Danny Cardwell from ThoughtWrestler.blogspot.com. A couple weeks back, I wrote an editorial in my local newspaper, and it was brought about because of a passage I read in an old economics textbook of mine. The question was posed: how does a producer determine when to employ additional units of a resource? And if you read that question or you listen to the way I read it, it doesn't sound malicious or have any viciousness inside of it. But then you break it down and you understand that they're talking about people. Units of a resource is the equivalent of labor. Labor is made up by people, and people have dreams and hopes and responsibilities. And inside of our current economic situation, we've seen a 30-plus year run where the business community, the investment class, has viewed labor as additional units of resources. Now, when you talk about stuff like this, the tried and true comeback is that, well, it's class war, and you're trying to use politics of division, and that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is point out that most of us fall into categories in which we work. There are three tiers of people on this planet, and this isn't a rigid theory. I mean, it can be tested, but there's a tier of people on this planet that are the investment class, that are the wealth class, that basically live off of investments, dividends on previous investments. They, rent properties, and they collect revenue in that manner. The next class of people are people that are white collar, blue collar professionals that work, that make their living based on salary, that earn their income through the trading of their time and their labor. And that category fits the overwhelming majority of all of us. And then the last tier of people are people that, have no income, no steady income stream, or people that are dependent upon some sort of government stipend for their living. But the idea that labor in this country for 30 plus years, haven't seen the kind of benefits and gains that the investment class has seen over the same period is a telling fact. And when you look at the people who defend this, and there's several positions to kind of defend this from, but when you look at it, the people who defend this genuinely or generally have something at stake. What gets me, though, is when there are people who, from the position of the second class of people, workers, earners, people who are living on salary, when they defend this, it's counterintuitive to their best interest. The moment that you can sell a good at price X, and you can produce it at price Y, and if you can cut the wages of Y, if you can cut the way you regulate, if you can cut safety measures, if you can outsource that job and have someone else do it cheaper in a less regulated market, then you can still sell that same commodity or service for the same price, and you can reap the difference in the middle. And so that's what we've seen happen. The outsourcing of jobs in this country, was based solely on the idea that the investment class could ship these jobs to another country with less regulation, with cheaper wages, and benefit themselves. And that's part of this system that, that's never going to change. This isn't a polemic about a radical change in the system. Again, with any of my videos, the idea is that we as people on the ground understand our role and what's going on around us. So, it's not that you call for some sort of radical change in the system, because the fact of the matter is that every crisis we've ever faced in this country, economically speaking, there hasn't been a viable solution that gets us away from the current system. So we tweak it, we add a regulation here, a regulation there, we provide more funds for the safety net, we add stimulus into the economy through quantitative easing and whatnot, and all these measures have been used to show that we really have no viable alternative to the system that we have. So with that out in the open, from my perspective, my position, how do I address it? Well, I am a salaried, a wage earning person. So I have to control my spending. I have to try to save. I have to make sure I'm not caught up in commodity fetishism and the market mentality that all of my needs in this life and all of my wants in this life are the same thing. Needs, I need to sleep. I need to eat. I need to stay warm, And the wants and the status associated with the wants and the luxuries of life are often the pitfalls that we fall into that leave us vulnerable to the harsh realities of life. As I sit here right now, I'm warm, I'm comfortable, the lights are coming on in my house, and I'm comfortable, I'm fine. But the reality is that could change in 6 weeks, 2 weeks, a month, a year. I could find myself in a position through no fault of my own that I need the assistance of the social safety net. Um, and that has to be there for people that need it. One of the negatives that we hear about the social safety net is that it becomes a hammock for some. For some people, it becomes a way of life, and they never seek to aspire to higher positions than that. And for some people, that's probably the case. I would say that for the overwhelming majority of people in those situations, they would just as soon be able to do something much more economically viable than wait on the postman to deliver a check or an electronically wired fund. But back to the original issue about labor and the status of our current economic situation. As it relates to politics and this being a political season, we're going to have candidates from both parties promising us the world. And there's going to be solutions offered that have been offered for the past 35, 40 years. One party's going to say, well, if we cut taxes, we get out of the way and let the market, operate unfettered, unrestrained, then the market will correct itself. And, inside the body of history, that's showed us that that's not always the case. The other party is going to offer the solution of, raising the minimum wage, and that if we tax the highest earning Americans if we raise their taxes, we'll be able to add revenue to the federal government that we can use for social programs. And that as a solution is not going to totally work either. There has to be some sort of way that we find the best solutions to these problems in a way that doesn't hurt the economy, but that does account for the working people in this country, that provides solutions to their problems. When you work a full-time job and you're still living in poverty, there's something wrong. And the answer is that some people give is that, well, minimum wage jobs are entry-level jobs, and that these jobs are to be held by children while they're still living at home to give them work experience. What the reality is that these jobs are held by more and more adults. The average age of the minimum wage worker is about 34, 35 years old. The average minimum wage worker has children at home, and you can't support a family on that kind of wage. So there has to be a way that we can, A, give these people more money, and more money would lead to a better quality of life, and B, do it without causing, cataclysmic shocks throughout our fragile economy. And so those are the questions that we have, and what bothers me is that no politician is willing to tell you the truth about these things. And it stems from the fact that most politicians on a national level are taking so much money and have so much of their vested interest in keeping the status quo the way it is, that you have a few voices that are talking about, radical progressive changes, but they're in a minority. And you have a few voices from the libertarian and maybe a more conservative bent talking about, massive cuts to the social safety net, but, they're in the minority. And we've got to find a way to bridge the gap. So those are my thoughts right now. Support the blog, thoughtwrestler.blogspot.com. Have a great day. Peace.